All right, welcome to another episode of Authentic Journeys. I'm your host, Fahad Zaidi. This podcast, the goal of this podcast is to explore the themes of high performance by talking to folks that have started something, whether that's a podcast, a business, something creative, and kind of dig deep into the why as to kind of what makes them tick, what made them start what they started. And we combine that with some themes around behavioral psychology, which is something I'm kind of deeply interested in. And through conversation, we kind of explore themes of those two things. So a big thank you to our listeners for joining this one. Today I'm joined by Bashar Syed, who is the founder and co-host of one of the top cricket podcasts in the world, and definitely the top podcast on the topic of cricket in North America. Bashar, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Fahad, for having me. I'm quite flattered by the intro.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't we kick things off by you introducing yourself a little bit, and then talking to us a little bit about what you've built.
Right. So, like you mentioned, my name is Bashar. I am the founder, co-host of North America's biggest cricket podcast called Backward Point. I co-host this along with my older brother, who helps co-host the podcast. We started this podcast about 2.5 years back, so like the end of 2022, and we've just kept at it since, stayed consistent. And I would say over the past 2.5 years, we've built a following of around 100,000 across platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. And we've done some pretty cool stuff with player interviews. We've done some player versus backward point matches. We've also done a collaboration with Islamabad United and PSL 9, which is one of the most successful PSL teams. So yeah, looking back, very proud of all of what we've built.
Awesome. Talk to us a bit about your childhood. Like, how do you think your childhood shaped you into two things? One, becoming a creator, and kind of how that led to you starting this podcast.
Yeah, so I think looking back at my childhood, cricket was always a very big part of it. And a lot of people might not know this, but we actually grew up in California. So between the ages of 3 to 7, I lived in California. And my earliest memory of cricket is watching the 2003 ODI World Cup, specifically the Pakistan versus India match. I recall vividly watching Shoaib Akhtar run in, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And I remember at the same time, my brother watched Shahid Afridi and he wanted to replicate Shahid Afridi. So we sort of had those roots within us. And I would say cricket was in our blood. We got it from our dad. Our entire family is cricket fanatics. So before I could be a creator, I had to be a massive cricket fan. So yeah, the passion of cricket was always there. And then we moved to Pakistan. And I remember when you're moving to Pakistan, one of the conditions I had with my dad to move to Pakistan was that he would put me in a cricket academy. So there was the PIA Academy. It was just like right behind our house. And we went to Pakistan, moved to Karachi, and I joined the academy, went there on like weekend, early mornings, walking to the academy with my kit. And that just, I guess, shows the madness that I had for the sport. And eventually we moved to Canada, and my brother and I would sort of just have these like very heated debates about cricket, and he would say that I have hot takes or sometimes good takes, and he thought we should record what you're saying and put it online, and that I guess is the inception of the podcast.
Awesome. That's cool. Actually, it's quite similar to my story. So I was born and raised in Toronto, and then we reverse immigrated. So when I was about 4 years old, our family moved back to Pakistan for about 10, 15 years, and then we came back to Canada when I was about 15 or so to Calgary. So I've never actually met someone who's kind of been in those shoes before, such as yourself, like almost like growing up here with like back home culture and then actually going there and then coming back. So that's super
I think
interesting.
like me moving back to Pakistan, like it's shaped me as who I am as a person. And I think those were like really formidable years. Like people look back and say, core memories. My core memories are of California and Pakistan and just like being on the streets of Karachi playing gully cricket, experiencing what that's like. And I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Awesome. So between you and your brother, You say you try to emulate Shoaib Akhtar and he tries to emulate Shahid Afridi. Between the two of you, who do you think does a better job kind of emulating your idol? Like,
I
who do you
think
think
he
is
does
closer?
it. Yeah, no, I think he does it because he bowls leg spin. Not to take anything away from leg spin, but leg spin I think is a lot easier than trying to ball 160 kilometers an hour. I think
Yeah.
at best I ball like 105 on a good day.
Mhm.
So, but I still try to copy like Shoaib Akhtar's aggression and like his mindset of trying to just go out there, take wickets, and try to impose yourself on the opponent. So those are things I still try to like keep within myself.
Awesome. So, um, on that topic of like having those formidable years in Pakistan, being surrounded by cricket, playing gully cricket, there's over, hundreds of millions of people in Pakistan, and whether you're a boy or a girl, big or small, we all play gully cricket at some point. We're all kind of consumed by the sport, no matter what. There's a ton of us in North America now that kind of come from that world. But there's only one Backward Point podcast, right? And there's a very small amount of people that are kind of starting businesses or creative stuff in cricket. And so, what do you think shaped you in those formidable years to go from someone that consumes a lot of cricket stuff to actually contribute to this industry? Like, did you have any influences early on in your life? Like talk to me a little bit about, what do you think separates you from someone that, just kind of consumes what's out there versus, someone having these takes and someone having this idea and actually following through with it?
Yeah, so definitely like growing up in Pakistan, I used to watch a lot of like Geo Super and PTV Sports, and I would watch all the player interviews and the our pro pras players talking about the game and analyzing it. And I would like pick up on things what they're saying and also trying to like grow myself in my own knowledge as well. But what would sometimes bother me is like when I would see sports journalists interview cricketers and they ask the same boring questions and they're always looking for like the next headline or like the spicy news or controversy. And because I think I play cricket, I play at a pretty competitive level when I was in my teenage years. I have experience of what it's like being out there on the field, playing with a real cricket ball, being in a higher pressure situation. I've also like captained my gully team, my high school team. So I have some sort of like cricket ball knowledge. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I always think like if I had that player in front of me, I would ask them about this or what they were thinking when they were doing this. So I was kind of disappointed with how our media landscape was around cricket. A lot of it was based off of negativity. And I remember every time the Pakistan team would do bad, our media would do good because they would thrive on negativity and just like blowing players out, going extremely personal. And there was nothing really constructive about what they were saying. And that's when I was like, man, I can do a better job. So my brother actually he pushed me to start the podcast, and our goal was always to not do what's being done on TV, which is just sensationalism and extreme clickbaity
Hmm.
stuff. And that's what we felt like our brand should be. We should be building a brand of not toxic negativity, but toxic positivity, and trying to talk about the actual match that's happened, or if we have the opportunity to speak to a player, that we talk in depth about their journey, their mental state, instead of trying to look for those clickbaity controversies or headlines.
Awesome. And so if I could wave a magic wand and have anyone come on your podcast, any cricketer, any generation, who do you think that would be and what would you want to talk to them about?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I've thought about this. I think I'd love to do a podcast with Imran Khan, former captain, politician,
Hmm.
but the podcast would be about cricket. It wouldn't be about his politics. I'd love
Hmm.
to know about his journey, about how he basically transformed himself from being a medium pace fast bowler to a express pace fast bowler. That rarely ever happens in cricket. You see guys like increase their paces from 5 to 10 kilometers, but what Imran Khan did back in the day is basically it's I don't think it's ever been replicated. That plus I'd love to talk about his batting, his captaincy, winning the World Cup, grooming players that were up and coming, leaving a legacy behind. I think a strictly cricket podcast with Imran Khan, give me 2 hours, and that would be a pretty interesting one.
That would be amazing. Yeah, we hear a lot about him, right? Like through Wasim Akram and stuff, but actually talking to him would be amazing.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about Shoaib Akhtar, Imran Khan, like some of the influences you've had in the cricket world. But as you've started this podcast, it is, whether it's a podcast or a business, I do find that these things are somewhat creative, and we probably intrinsically or extrinsically probably look at some folks that influence our creative path. So as you've kind of grown this podcast and it's evolved kind of naturally over the years, who are your influences that you kind of maybe look up to in the podcasting world or in the cricketing world that you're kind of looking for inspiration from?
Yeah, there's a few creators that would come to mind, not necessarily within the cricket media landscape, but more so like on the YouTube with the podcasting landscape. One name that comes to mind immediately is Ali Abdaal. Ali Abdaal is a UK based productivity YouTuber. He is a doctor, but he's sort of left his medicine practice to be a full time creator. And he talks a lot about the YouTube platform, what it takes to make a successful video, how to be more creative, how to actually pursue your passion. So Ali Abdaal one. Mr. Beast, I try to listen to all of his podcasts and his interviews because I feel like he's really put in a lot of time and effort into understanding how the YouTube platform works, how to be a successful creator, and so I try to like get tidbits from him. And then number three, I would say Colin and Samir. They are a podcast based in LA, and they do podcasts on the YouTube creator economy, and they speak to creators about what it takes to become successful on YouTube, how to build an audience, how to build a community. I think in terms of like just the media landscape, I would say those three names. And then inspirations within the cricket podcast world would be the Great Cricketer. I think we try to look up to them as well because they have a pretty good chemistry between them. They're one of the biggest cricket podcasts out there. And more lately, I think we've been looking at Cricket District, which is a cricket media agency based in the UK, and they do really fun, high quality videos with pro players. And they've worked with teams in the SA20. They've just recently worked with Rajasthan Royals at the IPL, and they are doing some really fun stuff. So like those are a few creators that come to mind when I think of inspiration.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. And so talk to me now a little bit about the actual process of starting Backward Point. You talked about your brother was kind of encouraging you, forcing you to kind of start this. Um, were there any kind of roadblocks or anxieties? Like what was hard about maybe the early days or even before the early days, like before you got started? Like what was some of the hard stuff that you had to go through just to launch Backward Point?
Yeah, so there's a lot of context behind Backward Point becoming Backward Point. And I think it starts off with like the first name of this podcast was called The Final Over. And we used to shoot this at our local library's media space. They had a maker space, so they had a room with mics, and you could just come in and record. And firstly, like there was a lot of resistance to firstly booking that space, making podcast notes, recording it, posting it, and then not really knowing what the podcast is going to be concretely about. So we did a few episodes with under the name The Final Over, and we weren't able to be consistent because again, there was a big hurdle of like booking the makerspace, going in there, having free time. I was back then in university doing a part-time job. I was also the president of my club, cricket club at university. So a lot of things I was trying to juggle a lot of things at the same time, and similar to my brother as well. So finding time, finding space to record, and having the right equipment was an initial challenge. And then I think around COVID, we tried to rebrand the podcast. We called it the Broadcast Podcast. We wanted it to be like a play on two brothers who host a podcast. So it's the Broadcast, but it was spelled Brodcast instead of Broad. And so we did a few episodes under that banner. And back then, the podcast sort of expanded into like other stuff. So it was Cricket Plus. We were doing movie reviews, we were doing album reviews, we are just talking to anybody we could find on the internet. And that wasn't really working too much. So we tried to do another rebrand. And we had the name Vaguely Familiar, under which we had three different podcasts. It was a podcast. Backward Point was one of the wings of that podcast where we would talk about cricket, but we also had two other wings where we talked about music and movies. And I felt like we were doing a lot of stuff under one banner. And so people were kind of confused as to what they're clicking on. Like, what is Vaguely Familiar about? Firstly, very tough name to pronounce and remember and spell. So we made a mistake on picking the name. But we noticed we were the most consistent and the most passionate about doing podcasts on cricket. And I think that's the moment where we decided, okay, to make this podcast successful, we have to make Backward Point into its own beast and stay consistent and invest time into it. And I guess that's when we are in the timeline of the end of 2022, where we get together, we make a separate channel called Backward Point, and our commitment initially was that regardless if you get one view or 10,000 views, we're going to do a podcast a week for 2 years. Because apparently that's what Ali Abdal recommended. To have a successful YouTube channel, you got to do one video a week for 2 years, and then you can look back and be like, okay, I did YouTube for 2 years, it didn't work for me, but to give yourself the best chance, you got to stay consistent for a long period of time. And within the span of, I think, a few months, we had built sort of our own brand and our own following, because there was a bit of a niche within the cricket space that nobody was tapping into, which is the diaspora South Asians who obviously live outside of their home countries, but they didn't have a podcast in English to watch. And that's something that I sort of craved when I was growing up in Canada. Like, there was a lot of cricket podcasts out there, but none on Pakistan cricket in English. So we tried to fuse both of them, and Backward Point became a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Like, there's something about what you guys are doing. Like, our culture has this concept called dawat, right? Like, where you get family friends together over like food or something, and it has that same, like, your podcast has that same vibe. It's like you're talking to like your family. It's like you're hearing your family friends talk about the sport that you love, which is like super super interesting. Talk to me a bit about, in the early days, was there ever a moment? Or since the early days, has there ever been a moment where you guys have thought about quitting, where you felt like this is kind of the end of the road, or if certain things don't work out, this is kind of our last over or last ball, so to speak?
Last over, I see what you did there. I would say not recently, but I would say like initially when we started, not Backward Point, but the other podcasts, there was a moment where we were like, I don't think we're serious about this. We're gonna see how this goes. It's sort of a fling. If it works, it works. It's sort of like throwing a dart in the dark and see if it lands or not. But I'd say since Backward Point started, like I said, our goal was to do a podcast a week for 2 years and then see what the results are. Luckily for us, within 6 months of that, our podcasts, we had a few guests on the podcast, which made the podcast viral, and we were able to like build on that, make a community, and we haven't looked back since.
Awesome, awesome. Talk to me a bit about sacrifices. Like, what major sacrifices do you think you've had to undertake to kind of make this a reality?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much time and effort it takes to produce a podcast, do prep work, record it, edit, export, upload, chapter, have a thumbnail ready, have a clips ready. And I think all of that takes a lot of hours. And so in terms of sacrifices, I would say long nights, early mornings, a lot of friends cut out, a lot of social life sacrificed. That's from my end. My brother, I'll tell you a really interesting story. So this is back in 2023, October. So the ODI World Cup is happening. My brother and his wife were expecting a kid. And I think this is like the day before the India versus Pakistan match. And we were invited by this TV channel in India. I think it's called like Fan Code. They wanted to do an India versus Pakistan fan war. So we were the Pakistan representatives, and they called the guys from Sports Jari to be the India representatives. and they were going to put us up against the battle to have a sort of a word of mouth war, see who wins. And we're recording this thing, and my brother's wife goes into labor as we're recording this thing. And my brother's commitment is that like his mother-in-law is knocking on the door telling him that his wife is expecting in labor, and my brother's like, hold on a minute, I gotta finish recording. And we finished recording, and my brother took her to the hospital, and our nephew Mikhail was born, and he was born the day of the India versus Pakistan match. And so my brother sort of watched the match with his son in his hand and his wife on the bed. And I remember he came back the next day with his full family, and we did a podcast reviewing that match. And so that's his sacrifice. He has his own family kind of thing going on. And for him, I think it's a bigger sacrifice because the wife and the small baby, and still showing up for the podcast when his wife is in labor and then when his wife has just delivered a baby. So those sort of things happen behind the scenes, which people don't get to see.
Hmm. Was that the 48-18 game? Is that the game? Pakistan India game?
What do you mean 48 and 18?
The really epic comeback that India had?
No,
Or
this
was
is
that
the
the
this is the ODI World Cup match that happened in India where we were like where
Oh, I
Rizwan
see.
Babur had a partnership, and then Rizwan got out and then Babur got out. We had a collapse for like
Mm-hmm.
190 or something.
Oh, yes, 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 yeah, I remember. I remember,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
at Ahmedabad.
Yeah. We were like 140, 150 for like not that many wickets down. And then I remember like going to the bathroom and coming back and we were like 180 all out or something.
Sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
game.
I remember that. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, talk to me about the psyche of you and your brother then. Like you're throwing darts in the dark, you're pivoting, like it's something you're trying for a couple of years. It doesn't sound like this is something you've fully gone in, like all in on, but it seems like you're maybe getting there. So talk to me about the why behind making the sacrifice. Like even though back then it was you guys were still just starting out backward point, but what do you think made you guys make those sacrifices? Like what made it seem like the sacrifice is obvious or it's going to be worth it?
I think it has to go back to the childhood, our passion for cricket, our love for the sport and Pakistan team, and just in hopes of building community and like knowing that if there's even a single person out there who's listening to us who can relate, who can find his own community within Backward Point, I think those things are what keeps you motivated. And I think ultimately that's what matters. I've been reflecting a lot on the past, I think, year or so. And there's a lot of internal team talks that we have about sponsorship or monetization or like making this a business and successful. But I think sometimes within all those conversations, you can forget why you started. And I think about what the 12-year-old version of me would think about my life right now, where I get to do a podcast on Pakistan cricket and people actually tune in to listen to what I have to say. I get an opportunity to speak to international Pakistan players. Like that to me, just saying this right now still feels surreal. So to me, the why goes back to like why you started, why you want to keep going. Because if it's just like superficial things, it can fade out quite quickly.
Definitely. Talk to me about the highs and lows. Like so far, what do you think's been your highest moment with Backward Point and the lowest moment?
The highest moment has to be the podcast with Mohammad Haris. It was basically like our first international Pakistan cricket player. And I remember like back when I was in university, I had this whiteboard in my room where I would have, my goals in life. And I had a section of all my courses that I've completed and then the ones that I have to complete to graduate. And then I had a section of just what I want to achieve on a spiritual level. And then I had a section of podcast goals. And one of the goals I had there for a very long time was have an international Pakistan player. And so the moment we recorded the podcast with Mohammed Haris, I was like, this is one of those like bucket list things that you checked off. And so just doing that podcast for me was an amazing experience. It was like a dream come true. But then when we released that podcast, it immediately went viral. And I mean, ARY News, Geo News were cutting the clips and playing it on TV obviously without giving us credit, but it was just like nothing in life can prepare you for going viral. And it is at that moment where I realized like what we have actually done. Because the next day it was the finals of the GT20. And I remember going in to the stadium, going through security, and immediately a few people stopped us. They're like, "Are you guys the guys who did the Mohammed Harris podcast? Were you guys the hosts? Are you guys Backward Point?" And at that moment, I realized that this is something crazy. Like we've done something insane. And I think within the matter of a couple of days, that podcast did like 200K views. The clips from that podcast did 1 million views within hours. So
Wow.
that like, and I think nothing can prepare you for going viral. And the reception we got, people were like, "Who are these guys? They ask good questions. Like this is such an entertaining podcast. Mohammed Harris is such a good guy," and that I think is like we peaked then.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. What's on your whiteboard now? Like what's a goal that maybe you're about to hit, or like going after, or maybe haven't hit yet that you're like the most excited about?
I think we've talked about this internally as a team that this year we want to experiment with different things. So trying out different clip styles. I've been working on this series called Backward Point Explainers, where I do a 35 to 40-second video on a certain topic, explaining why this is so cool or like this is such an anomaly. And the first clip I made is like why Yunus Khan is one of the most underrated test batters. And it's because he has the most test centuries in the fourth innings of a test match. And I think I want to like tell more stories through the platform that I have on cricket and Pakistan cricket. So I've been just scripting more stuff, and I want to release a lot of those stuff coming in. And I think the reception so far has been quite well. So I want to continue doing that. The next thing I want to do is actually make more cricket content. I think an edge that Nazar Bhai and I have on other podcasters is that we actually play cricket. Like we still play cricket in the league that we're in. And I want to use that edge to shoot more stuff with players, like do more player versus backward point stuff. And I think considering how well our first video with Mohammed Nawaz did, it there is an audience that wants to see that because I think no one's really done that stuff with South Asian players, and that's on our radar. And we're going to keep trying to collaborate with other teams, other leagues, and just keep growing and keep building Backward Point.
Awesome. Yeah. You might be familiar, but there's this whole subculture in the UK of like football content, and like footballers and YouTubers kind of working together. And it's interesting that no other sport has kind of caught on to that type of content, right? Like there's a lot of like Premier Leaguers that'll talk to YouTubers and do like crossbar challenge, free kick challenge, and stuff like that. It's like super engaging content for the fans. But yeah, super interesting to hear that you might be doing something similar for cricket.
I think
You
cricket
talk.
is still like light years behind on what other sports are doing. And I agree with you. There is a huge audience of people who want to see similar content, but there's just a lot of old heads and gatekeepers within cricket that aren't allowing it to happen. So I hope one day we're in a space where we're welcomed and respected and invited to shoot some stuff like this.
For sure. Awesome. You talked a little bit about sacrifices and giving us a glimpse, like peeling behind the veil of like what you and your brother have gone through to record some of the stuff that, us as fans have really got to enjoy. Talk to me a little bit about lessons learned along the way. So since you've started Backward Point, have you learned any unexpected lessons or had to make any unexpected sacrifices that you just weren't aware of kind of at the time going into it?
Lessons I've learned are mostly about like how podcasts work, how the YouTube platform works, and I think it's very important to understand like the platform that you're posting content on and how people behave on that platform. So I think for us, just knowing that we need to have a solid graphics team that can make good, eye-catching, high-quality thumbnails, because your podcast can be the greatest podcast in the world, but if it's not clickable, people cannot find your podcast. you will not get any reception or views. So I think just learning that and trying to go through the repetitions. I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours to like master something. I feel like it's more like 10,000 repetitions. So the more repetitions you go through, the more you learn, okay, this is working, this is not working. And the good thing is that YouTube gives you immediate feedback. It tells you what the click-through rate is on your thumbnails, on your titles, and a combination of both of those things being perfect can lead to generating more views and reaching a larger audience in essence. So I think over the years, I've just understood the platforms that we've been using to post content. YouTube being one of them, but obviously Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, that sort of a thing. So I think I've just been learning and trying to learn from the repetitions we've been doing on a daily basis. I think we just posted our 500th video on YouTube. So that's just, you can tell that's a lot of repetitions.
And then talk to me a bit about the lowest point. Like what's been maybe the hardest thing or the biggest failure you've come across so far, whether it's backward point or earlier on in your journey.
Yeah, it's a good question. Hardest failure, I think, was just the lessons we learned initially with the branding of our podcast, the niche we're trying to target for the podcast. So I think we had to go through three rebrands to understand what we're actually doing. And it had to begin with who our audience is and who we're making this podcast for. And then you can sort of work your way backwards. Okay, so it's for a diaspora audience, it's for people who love cricket. And we just had to like, I would say, reverse integrate and find out, okay, so it's because of this audience, because of this platform, this is what the podcast should be. But I think we had to go through those failures and those repetitions, those hours, to finally come to the right conclusion that Backward Point has to become its own thing, and just knowing who the Backward Point podcast is for.
And why is the name backward point and not Brothers Point or Cricket Point or something like that?
I think one of the most iconic cricketers in cricket is John T. Rhodes, and John T. Rhodes fielded at backward point. So I think it's that fielding position is special. Firstly, secondly, it's sort of like a play on the word where, oh, you have a backward point, right? So it's just, we're not trying to be too serious on the podcast. We try not to take ourselves too seriously. I know sometimes people who tune in do take us way too seriously, but I always say I am not a cricket expert. I am not a cricket analyst. I am a student of the game. So you just, and we try to like integrate some comedic element because I cannot be Rashid the Thief on backward point. That's just, he has his own thing going on because of that.
So right now, given kind of the state we're in with cricket, like a bunch of stuff just ended and now like new series are starting. Do you currently have a backward point about cricket? Like just given the state of cricket or maybe Pakistan cricket?
I just think cricket right now is being dominated by the big three. And that to me just seems like it's not a level playing field for other teams. Like, for example, if you just compare the amount of test matches England, Australia, and India play compared to, any other team, you'll see how wide the gap is. I think there was a stat where Joe Root debuted a couple of years after Kane Williamson, and Joe Root has played, I think, around 150 test matches, and Kane Williamson is still around the 100 test match mark. So that's like a discrepancy of like 50 test matches, and Joe Root started after Kane Williamson. So how are their batting stats even comparable? Because just the discrepancy in the matches, the innings, the condition that they play in. And it's disappointing because, a lot of Pakistan fans want to see Pakistan play more ODIs, more test cricket. And it's unfortunate that we're playing like 5 test matches in the next 12 months. So, yeah, I'd love to see some more equality, some more balance within all the cricketing nations.
Awesome, yeah. And changing gears a bit, when you were in the early days of Backward Point, what was your, definition of success? Like what would have had to been true for you to kind of be happy with the outcome looking back? And how do you think that definition of success has changed over time?
Yeah, I think initially the definition of success would be just growth, both as podcasters and as our channel. So we would be monitoring views. Are the views increasing on a weekly basis? Are we getting more engagement? Are the comments increasing? Because I think our ultimate goal is circled around community building. There's this article written by Kevin Kelly. It's called 1000 True Fans. And he says that if you have a loyal fan base of 1000 people who trust you, who will buy from you, will be part of your community, that's all you kind of need to quit your day job and do what you want to do full time. So, along those lines, just growing subscriber count, growing view count, growing engagement, community building, that was our initial success metric. I think right now, we're trying to experiment and we're trying to see what more can we do, because I feel like Backward Point has kind of stagnated a bit in the past 12 months. So we're trying to sit on the drawing board and see what we can do differently to continue growing as a podcast.
Awesome. So it sounds like you have more than 1,000 people at least in your community. So my next question is, when are you quitting your day job?
Yeah. Listen, if I wanted to be rich, I would not be doing a podcast on Pakistan cricket in English. So still a long, long way to go.
Awesome. Anything you would change if you could go back and kind of do this all over again? Is there any kind of one big thing that you would change about your journey so far?
It's hard to say because I think the journey is what makes you. It's because of all the pitfalls we faced and all the failures we faced is because we've landed here. So it's hard for me to go back and say I would have changed that, I would have done that differently, because it's the trials and tribulations that we've gone through that have made us who we are. I think Ryan Holiday says that the obstacle is the way. So the more obstacles we kept coming through, we tried to like find a way to navigate our way around it, over it. So yeah, probably just would have told myself before starting the podcast to just go all in. Don't think really about the outcome and focus on the process and build systems where you can be consistent.
Nice. And then, there's this concept of temperament with cricket players, right? You have to have the right kind of intent and temperament. How do you think those qualities that you've learned playing cricket and being involved as a cricket player, how do you think that has translated into starting a company or starting a podcast and kind of maybe having the right temperament when it comes to the approaches you have to take to be successful?
Yeah, I think they talk about the three T's to be a good cricketer: talent, technique, and temperament. So if you have all these things aligned together, you can be a very good player. In terms of using cricket skills within the podcast landscape, I think I touched upon this where like I've captained my gully cricket team in Pakistan. I captained my high school cricket team here in Canada. I captained my university team, and currently I'm captaining my league team where I play in my club. And so I think I can use some of the experience that I've used as a captain within Backward Point, because I think what's really important as a captain is firstly to show your team what the vision is, what the end goal is, and then how you plan on leading them by example to that vision board. So Backward Point right now is a team of 4 people, and I think my brother is more of like in a supporting role, where I think he wants me to take the lead on what I think Backward Point should be and where we want to go. And so I think it's really important to nudge your team in the right way, to think in the right terms, to be on the same page, to show them a vision of what we want Backward Point to be, and have everybody work cohesively to work towards that goal.
Awesome. Awesome. And then what's the vision you would say this year for your cricket team that you're captaining? Like, are you guys going for the hardware this year? Some division championships?
Our team actually is jinxed in losing in the quarterfinals. Like
Hmm.
I've been playing for this team for the past 8 years. We've made it to the playoffs like 5 times, and all 5 times we keep losing in the quarterfinals, even though we have a great team. So I think the goal for this year obviously is to win the championship, but firstly it's to get the monkey off the back by winning the
Hmm.
quarterfinals and getting to the next stage, the top four. So that's been a huge focus, and we talk about this in all of our team meetings that championship winning is important, yes, but let's just get through the quarterfinals because somehow we keep bottling it when we come
Hmm.
to a high pressure game.
Sounds like New Zealand, right? A little bit.
Kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
or even South Africa.
But yeah, South Africa, yeah. But
Yeah,
anything,
sometimes.
anything better, anything but kind of what Pakistan has been up to, maybe
Yeah,
the last four
yeah,
or 5 years.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bashar. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did as well. Again, really appreciate your time and effort that you put into this. I've been a big fan of your podcast since around 2022 or so. Had a great time kind of watching you guys and being part of the Discord community and everything. So, I really appreciate everything that you're putting out. And I think you do have a great community and a great idea. And yeah, I would love to see kind of where you guys take this. So all the best in the future. And yeah, thank you again for engaging with me and my audience a little bit today too.
No, thank you, Fahad, for inviting me, and thank you for being a frequent and loyal listener of Backward Point. I think you also watch us on your TV, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks.
Bye bye.